Hey all, welcome back to Self-Care Haven. So I'm continuing my series on female narcissists with a video on the narcissistic mother. I'm sure many of you can relate to this, whether you've had a narcissistic parent, whether you've had two narcissistic parents, whether you've had a sibling perhaps that was narcissistic. And I really want to talk about this issue because I've definitely seen so many parents who do fall on that spectrum, and some who definitely have the full-fledged disorder, and who treat their children like objects. I think that's one of the primary things that we have to look at when we talk about narcissism in parenting, because if you've read the recent psychological studies on how overvaluation of a child can lead to narcissism, not the full-fledged personality disorder necessarily, but at least levels of narcissism that can potentially become lethal in relationships, then we have to remember that the way that we validate the worth of our child is really going to affect the way they navigate interpersonal relationships, friendships, and how they perceive themselves in relation to the world. So imagine this. You are a parent. Let's say that you are a narcissistic parent and you really lack empathy and compassion for your child. You're really just focused on what can the child do for you. So what can the child achieve that you can brag about later on to your relatives, your friends? How can that child be a trophy and an object for your goals and your kind of vicarious accomplishments? How can they achieve for you what you didn't as an adult? I think of like crazy shows like Toddlers and Tiaras and just like child beauty pageants, and also dance shows where mothers put their kids through such stress and really affect their emotional well-being for very selfish reasons and motives, and it's just really disturbing. And unfortunately, that is very characteristic of a narcissistic mother, is that they treat, as well as a father, of course, too, because you might have both parents working together in this kind of malicious power play where they're triangulating the siblings, and they're making one child the golden child while they make the other one the black sheep and the scapegoat. Triangulation can also happen in family relationships as well, so be wary of that. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this, so I don't really need to tell you that, but it's very, very common in these types of these toxic family dynamics. And so when you're constantly communicating to that child from a very early age that they are only there to do your bidding, and if they fail, then they are worth nothing, and their worth is basically derived from what they accomplish or what they look like or what they can achieve for you, they grow up with a very low sense of self-worth, and they might compensate with that in many different maladaptive ways. They might develop such low self-esteem and codependency patterns that they actually attract or at least gravitate towards narcissistic partners when they grow up. They might become narcissistic themselves because that's all they've known, and they've been subconsciously programmed to see people as objects, just like they were seen as an object and used as an object as a child. They might have a mix of both reactions, and they're going to develop so many different defense mechanisms and create that persona to the world. They might become people pleasers. There's just so many maladaptive ways that this child could react to this type of abuse. And many people underestimate the effects of psychological and emotional violence. And I call it violence because it really is violence. When we think about the effect of subconscious programming, especially at an early age where your brain is still developing and there's such an impact on your socio-emotional development. When you think about the numerous studies that have shown that infants who grow up without care or love or affection have such traumatic results and can't even function. When you think about all that and you consider the effects of trauma on the brain and on socio-emotional development, and you think about the ways that personality disorders can manifest as a result of the interaction between environment and a predisposition, the genetic predisposition that your parents may have passed on to you, it's just incredibly, incredibly traumatic to even think about, honestly. But it's the truth, and it's something that we have to consider. And so when a narcissistic mother, and this can also apply to fathers as well, uses their child as a trophy, as an object, as the primary source of supply that they're feeding off of from, they're basing all of their happiness and all of their reputation and their status onto that child. It's imposing so much pressure onto that child that child has no sense of self-worth. They feel like, if I don't please this parent, then I'm worthless, because that's what's been communicated to me from a very young age. I've been told I am worthless if I don't achieve this or that. I am worthless if I don't please my parent. And the parent is obviously prone to triangulating that child with his or her friends or siblings. And so that's very devastating as well, to be compared in a very negative way to other people who are achieving these things that the parent wants you to achieve. So it's very important, even as parents who are not narcissistic, and I'm not a parent myself, but I'm just speaking in general to parents everywhere who might be watching these videos, to remember to really, really not treat our children as objects of our will, and really treat them as independent human beings. Even from a very young age, it's really important to instill a sense of self-worth and emotional validation, because that's another thing that narcissistic mothers never give their child, is that emotional validation and compassion and empathy for their wants, their needs, their feelings and thoughts. So I just wanted to make that brief video, because I think those are like really the main characteristics of the narcissistic mother that are so toxic, is the lack of emotional validation, the pity ploys they use when you refuse to be their object or they lose control of you, the triangulation methods they use to compare you to your siblings or your friends, making you feel like the worst daughter or son in the world if you don't comply to what they want for you. And I know that many of you are thinking, oh, well, all parents do that. Well, yes, maybe to some extent, but narcissistic mothers and fathers take it to a pathological degree of abuse and psychological violence, where you literally feel worthless as a child growing up, and even into adulthood. That's something that you're going to struggle with all your life in relationships, and the patterns that you develop and the defense mechanisms that you develop as a result, because you've been taught all your life that you're an object, that you're a trophy. And it's really, I don't know how many of you are spiritual, but I'm definitely a very spiritual person. So it's really about reconnecting with that divine sense of self and feeling like my worth does not come from my parents. My worth does not come from whoever wants to treat me as an object or a trophy. My worth comes from a source that is within me. And it's really important to reconnect with that divine self. Even if you don't want to call it your divine self, whatever you want to call it, just remember that there's a part of you that knows your real worth. And whether it's through yoga, meditation, different types of therapies, just engage in self-care every day. Engage in a habit of gratitude every day, and really try to disengage and detach from people who make you feel like an object or a trophy, as narcissistic mothers are prone to doing, as well as narcissistic fathers as well. And I hope this video appeals to a wide variety of people, including parents, including children of narcissists, and including people who've been involved in relationships with narcissists as a result of having a narcissistic parent. Because again, that trauma repetition and that compulsion to repeat those patterns that we've observed in childhood and have been ingrained in us since we were very young, we've been subconsciously programmed towards those types of toxic people. I really hope that this video speaks to you and gives you some emotional validation today. And I hope to talk to you soon, and I hope to continue this series. So until then, take care.